The Mishnah in Tainis mentions the 5 things that happened to Am Yisrael, the 5 bad things that happened to Am Yisrael. The first bad thing that happened to Am Yisrael is that they won't come into the Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. The 2 Batei Mikdash were destroyed, 2 Churbanos to Am Yisrael on Tisha B'Av. After the destruction of the temple, after the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash, 52 years after a city, Beitar, was destroyed. Beitar was the leftover, it was a center of the Chachamim, of the Jewish people here in Eretz Yisrael, and it lasted another 52 years, and eventually the enemy came also to the end, was destroyed, the Tisha B'Av. And Yerushalayim was plowed. After they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, Yerushalayim was plowed. So these are the 5 things that are mentioned in Mishnah Tainis, what happened to Am Yisrael. Let's start with the first thing, that Am Yisrael is not coming into Eretz Yisrael. Hashem is punishing the Jewish people that they're not going into Eretz Yisrael. So we all know that it starts with the sin of the spies, which needs a little bit of explanation. What happened over there, and what is the punishment that Hashem is giving to Am Yisrael? HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out Am Yisrael from Mitzrayim for the purpose to complete redemption, to give them the Torah, and to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. This is what it was meant to be, that the chosen people now will be out of exile, coming out of Mitzrayim. He's going to give them the Torah, and they'll make it into Eretz Yisrael. Jewish people are traveling in the desert, and then they come to Moshe Rabbi and say, okay, you know what, we want to go check out that land that Hashem promised to the Jewish people. So, for the most of the Mefarshim, that itself was already a lack of emunah of the Jewish people. Why you need spies? Why you need to go to check the land? If Hashem is promising you and telling you that He wants to bring you into the land, and it's a great place to be, why you need to send spies? So that itself is already a lack of emunah for the Jewish people. But what happens? The Jewish people send spies, 12 spies, they're told 40 days in the check out the land in Israel, and they come back and they carry with them huge fruit to show the people and to report to the people what kind of people live there and what kind of fruit grow over there. And they come back with a negative report and they say, the giants are there, how we could fight them. If you look clearly in the verses, it goes in stages. They don't go right away straight to the point. They say it in stages. They say, yeah, it's a great place, but maybe we can't fight it. And then it goes very straight to the point and say, Lo nuchalo, we can't do it. The giants over there, it's not for us. And they're showing also the fruit to show, look, everything there is strange. Nothing is normal over there, so it's not for us. And something very bad happens. All the Jewish people are crying at that night, Tisha B'Av. All. And Hashem says, okay, you cried bechia shel chinam for no real reason, and unfortunately, you will cry in the future for a reason. And that's what planted the seeds that this is a bad day for Am Yisrael. That very day when the Jewish people are all crying, challenging Hashem and saying to Him, oh, we can't make it to Israel, it's not good for us. That very point is planting the bad seeds for Am Yisrael and made it a bad day for Am Yisrael. And the question that is asked is, how it could be that that generation that are living at that time see all the great miracles that are happening in the desert, the manna that is coming down, the 7 clouds of glory that are taking care of the Jewish people, no concerns, no issues, everything is being provided, clothing they don't have to buy, Everything is taken care of. All physical needs are being taken care of. So how it could be a generation that is living it will come and say to Hashem and cry, we don't want to go into the land of Israel. It's not for us. How it could be? You see, you're living it right now. So Hashem that took care of you in the desert and you're seeing great miracles cannot bring you into the land of Israel? So there are a few explanations, and one of the explanations that I saw is that the Jewish people knew that Hashem could bring them into the land of Israel. But that requires from them a high spiritual standard. They heard what they heard from the spies. Israel, the giants are there. Look at the big fruit. They understood that this is not a regular place. It's not just another country or another place like all the rest of the world. They understood that Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, the Eretz HaKodesh, is special. And Hashem could do it for sure. But that will require from them a standard, a higher spiritual standard, and that's what they said. You know what? No, we don't want that. We want to live, so to speak, live simple. We don't want to live that high spiritual standard, to be more obligated to live more spiritual and keeping mitzvahs and keeping Torah. We want to be in a lower level, and that will be enough to us. And that was a great sin, because that's exactly the point of Am Yisrael. That's what we are meant to be. Hashem is taking us out of Mitzrayim, giving us the Torah, giving us the mitzvahs, for to go into this special place. And the Jewish people are saying, backing out and saying, no, we'd rather go back to Egypt. And that was a lack of emunah and a lack of understanding what we are meant to be. Am Yisrael, what Am Yisrael is meant to be. Mission is not completed, mission is not accomplished till we come into Eretz Yisrael. A few weeks ago we read in the Pashas Masei the travels of the Jewish people. And the Torah goes into detail all the names of the places that the Jewish people traveled. And the Rabbeinu Bechayai asks, why is it so important that the Torah is mentioning all these names? Name by name, station by station. Why is it so important? And the Rabbeinu Bechayai says the following. So first is to understand that it's a great miracle. The survivor of the Jewish people in the Midbar, in the desert, was far away from civilization, from countries that are around. Nothing was there. There was no field to go to harvest, to plant or to harvest. There was no water wells over there. Nothing was over there. No neighbors that you could go ask favors. Nothing was there. And the Rabbeinu Bechai described it and said, it would be very difficult to one man to survive in that desert for one day. So think about millions of people, a whole nation that are traveling, adults, men, women, children, and are surviving and living in this desert. So to make sure that we understand and remember this miracle, the Torah mentions in detail all the places that the Jewish people went through, and it's showing you exactly that these places were far away from civilization, from other countries, and it's only these great miracles of Hashem that He provided us with manna, with the 7 clouds of glory, and everything else that what made us to survive over there in the desert. That's what we have to remember. But then the Rabbeinu Bechai adds another idea, and he says the following. Unfortunately, there are times that the Jewish people came with complaints. Come to a place, no water, start to complain. And challenging, why you took us out of Egypt? Wouldn't it be better that we'll stay in Mitzrayim? Wouldn't it be better over there that we'll get at least water and some watermelon? And there's some places that was no water, but they didn't attack right away Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Rabbeinu Bechai, the names of many of the names in the desert were given according to the behavior of the Jewish people. Meaning, if they came in a good way, in a positive way, Even though there wasn't water, but they were patient, they asked in the right way, and they didn't attack or disrespect Moshe Rabbeinu, then the name had a good name. The place had a good name. But then when they came with the negative attitude, without patience, not respecting Moshe Rabbeinu, that name, that place got a bad name. And that's an unbelievable idea. Man is creating the path for himself. In many ways in life, in many times in life, we have challenges. Not everything is clear. Not everything is exactly the way that we think that will happen. They come to the desert, right, there's no water. You're allowed to ask, but you have to know how to ask. You have to remember that there are rules, how to respect, how to ask. And when the Jewish people are doing it the right way, it could be a name like Mataka, sweet. And that place is sweet. Here, Hashem provided to you 12 trees with dates and water over there that was provided for the Jewish people. So man in many ways is creating the path to himself, and he's deciding this will be a good place or this will be a bad place. So, and that's exactly the story of Tisha. When the Jewish people, like we said, cried at that night, they created the path, they created that this day is bad for the Jewish people. So it starts with the 5 things that the Mishnah in Kindness mentions, that we mentioned earlier, but it goes down through the years. Terrible things happen to the Jewish people on Tisha B'Av. One of the things is, for example, the Jewish people were living in Spain after the first exile. The tradition is that thousands of Jews exiled and made it to Spain. It took years, but they were accepted over there, and they were living very comfortable. And this was going on for years. In Spain itself, there were changes. There were times that the Muslims were controlling Spain, and there were times that the Christians were controlling it. Interesting that the Muslims were treating the Jewish people in a very good way, respecting them, hiring them for jobs, and the Rishonim that were living over there, and they called it the golden period, the golden time for the Jewish people, that they could learn over here, build yeshivot, build shuls, and it's all great. But things turn around, things do change. Spain is not Yerushalayim, and it wasn't the ultimate redemption. It was a good time for a while, and things do change. Classic Jewish experience when the other governors, ministers were jealous with the Jewish people. They convinced the kingdom over there that the Jews are really rebelling against the kingdom. They don't really like you. They're not loyal to you. And slowly, they started to decree all kind of decrees against the Jewish people. Then, till that it comes the point that they forced them that they must drop Judaism, convert to Christianity. The only option to stay in Spain not as a Jew will be to convert. So meaning no chance that you could stay in Spain as a Jewish man. And that's the famous Marranos, that some of them went in hidden, keeping Torah mitzvahs, meaning in the outside they'll show that they're Christian, but inside they're keeping Torah mitzvahs. This also is going on for a while. Then comes the Inquisition, and they're judging the people, the Marranos, to check on them what they're doing, if they're still keeping mitzvahs, if they're still connected to the shul, if they're still lighting candles for Shabbat and such. And that came to the end. At the very end, the Jews were told that that's it, you have to leave Spain. And one of the people that was in the very end is the famous Abarbanel, and he writes in his book, in the introduction of the book of Melachim, he writes that the very end of the Jewish people live in Spain happened in the period of the 3 weeks of Shloshta Shavuot. The groups of people were leaving Spain, and he himself left Spain on Tisha B'Av. So here's another, the Jews were there for hundreds of years, living very comfortable, and when something bad has to happen, it will happen on Tisha B'Av. But interesting, that Abarbanel said to the people that with him, we're not going to leave this place. We're not going to run away crying and sad. We're going to show happiness to the enemy. Because what we did, not to give up Yiddishkeit, not to give up the Torah and mitzvahs, we just did a great mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, glorifying God's name. And for that great mitzvah that we did, of being thrown out of this land, that we were loyal and we did live here for years, and we did a lot of good things for the place over here, but we are being blamed for all kind of things which we never did. And the main thing is that we just did a great mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, and he said to them, although it's Tisha, we should leave this place with happiness, and they left with singing and dancing that they did the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. That's the power of the Jewish people. That is the power of the Jewish people, and that we are standing over here. 1,956 years from the destruction of the temple, and for so many years, we are crying, we are fasting, we are begging, we are praying to Hashem. All those years, 1,956. It's unbelievable. Now, all over the world, people are sitting, some places still are sitting on the floor and crying and saying kinot and davening to Hashem. That itself is actually a sign that is still alive. We know that there are laws of mourners. Hilchot Avilut. Everything in Judaism has a halakha. There's nothing that, nothing is that we don't take care of or we don't deal with. We deal from A to Z, everything is there. So there are laws also for Avilut, how a mourner should act. What is he liable, what he can do, what he cannot do. And Chazal teach us that the mourner, there are certain times that you do. So for certain relatives is a month, father and mother, La Aleinu, is for 12 months. And Chazal teach us that after a while, it's a gift that Hashem gave, that you sort of live with it and you a little bit forget about the bad thing that happened, the relative that you lost. In a good way, because that, life has to go on. So it doesn't mean totally to forget, but it means that pain and the suffering is released a little bit from you, and that to give you the power to continue life. The lashon of Chazal is Gzeira min hamet shetishtachach min halev. It's a Gzeira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it, that will be forgotten, will be taken out from the heart of human being. So if we are here, all the Jewish people, all over the world, and acting still like mourners, and meaning that we are still waiting for something that has to come back. It's still alive, it's not dead, it's going to come back, B'ezrat Hashem. In the parashot, we have a few times in the Torah that Hashem is rebuking the Jewish people. And in one of them, it says like this, the Torah describes how the Jewish people, when they don't keep the Torah, they'll be thrown out of the land of Israel. The land of Israel is very special. It's the only place in the world that the people have to live to a certain standard, and if they don't live according to the standard, they'll be thrown out of. So the Torah describes in detail that if we won't fix our actions and don't put an act together, we'll be thrown out of the land, we'll go to exile, we'll go to Galut. And who will come here? The enemies. Will come, other countries, other people will come here, and they'll try to build it. But there's a very interesting pasuk over there, very interesting verse. I'll say the Hebrew first. V'shamumu alea kol oiveha. The enemies will come here, they'll try to build the land, but they won't succeed. V'shamumu. Shamamu means empty. Alea on it, kol oiveha. All the enemies that are coming and try to build this land, they won't succeed. They don't belong here. They're not the right people over here. The only reason that they're here is because the Jewish people were kicked out. And they think that they could come here and build this land and stay here, but they won't succeed. And that's written in the Tochacha, when the Torah is rebuking the Jewish people, and they'll be thrown out of the land. And Hashem is saying the enemies will come to here, but the good news is that the enemies that will be here will realize that they're not making it, they won't succeed here. So in the Tochacha, when Hashem is rebuking, he's telling the Jewish people, you'll be thrown out, but will be only temporarily. Nobody will manage, nobody will succeed to build the land like the Jewish people. It's actually in history books, it's brought down. You know, the famous travels of Mark Twain in 1867. He wrote about it 2 years later. He describes the land empty, agriculture not going on, villages are broken, not built. So he just describes that he doesn't understand what is people are making a big deal of the Holy Land. According to what he saw, is not much going on. Correct, because then the Jewish people were not here. The Meshech Chachma, also in the Pasuk, in the Tochacha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it goes on, the same Tochacha, Hashem warns the Jewish people and says to them, if you don't correct, you don't behave in the right way, you won't have the merit to be in the land of Israel and you'll be kicked out. But then after comes the Pasuk like this. Af gam zois, even after all what you did, all the sins that you did, lo me'astin, Hashem will never abandon us, will be disgusting with us. It won't be that level that Hashem says, that's it, I can't bring them back, I don't want them anymore. No, it will never reach that level. Lechalosam, Hashem will never punish us to destroy us, to totally destroy us. Would it be exiles? Yes. Would it be hard periods, hard times for the Jewish people? Yes. But we know that it's always for a certain time, for a certain place. We don't know for how long and how many people will suffer and how many people have pain, but we know that it's all measured by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It will never be that the Jewish people will be completely destroyed. And the Meshech Chachma over there, this is the Meshech Chachma writing in Europe, years before the Holocaust. The Meshech Chachma over there describes, and he says like this, if you look the travels of the Jewish people, they're being kicked out from one place and they go to another place. They come as immigrants, lower class, they're not accepted, people looking them down. But then slowly they get involved in the country that they are. People appreciate the wisdom. People see the loyalty that they do have to the place, and they get involved. And then the problem is they get too involved, and they want to adopt the culture, and they want to be exactly, a German, and they want to be Austrian, and they want to be whatever it is. They want to be exactly like the people they are. They want to be doctors, they want to be accountants, they want to be lawyers, and to be accepted because they're suffering so much. Oh, finally they're allowed enough to be doctors and accountants and lawyers. So then slowly they become too comfortable, and then Hashem has to bring a new wave to tell the host to kick away the Jewish people. So that's how it goes. We come, immigrant, we don't have rights, we come accepted, and then we sort of forget Torah and mitzvahs, and that's why Hashem has to raise again to tell the non-Jews, the hosts, to kick out the Jewish people. And the Meshech Chachma says over there, for those, and remember, this is years before the Holocaust, and these are the words that are written in the Meshech Chachma. He says, for those that think that Berlin and Yerushalayim, they have a mistake. And that's the history, because the people over there, there's some people over there were thinking that Berlin is Yerushalayim. Here we are. Finally, they let us. They accepted us. They opened all the doors. We could be in the government, we could be lawyers, we could be accountants, finally. And then, so they go so far, unfortunately we know that assimilation is a big issue. Some wanted to delete any Jewish background. Unfortunately, go to marry a non-Jewish girl, to change the name, to do a lot of things to delete the background. But guess what? Somebody will remind them. A new wave comes, a new decrees, a new anti-Semitism, a new idea comes, and they kick out the Jewish people. There was a name, I heard in the name of one of the rabbis of Soloveitchik, and he said that we have Kiddush and Havdalah. The Jewish people have two mitzvahs, the Kiddush and Havdalah. The Jewish people are meant to do Kiddush, to sanctify life. Torah, mitzvahs, to shape the person in the right place. That's really who we are. That's what we're meant to do, to sanctify the life. We don't run away from the physical world. The question is how we deal with it, and we have laws and instructions how to deal with it. But that's the whole idea of the Jewish people. We sanctify life. Kiddush. And says Rabbi Soloveitchik, he says, well, if the Jew doesn't do Kiddush, the non-Jew will come and do Havdalah. Havdalah is to separate. So if you didn't remember to do Kiddush, to sanctify, to act in the right way, the non-Jew will come and he'll separate him from you, and he'll remind you, you don't belong here. Berlin is not Yerushalayim. Germany is not Israel. So if you forgot that, he'll remind you, and he'll distance himself from you, and he'll separate and tell you, no, you don't belong here. That's what really, when the Jewish people sanctify, do Kiddush, and they keep the identity, that's what keeps the power of the Jewish people. It starts in the very beginning. Yaakov is the family, the Jewish family going down to Mitzrayim. And he trained the children. Chazal teach us that although the Jewish people were almost lost, but there were three things that remained, that the Jewish people remained. They didn't change the clothing, the language, and the name. They had at least that they knew that they are different from the non-Jews. And that's the idea. The Jew has to remember, yes, he's different than the others. We are meant to be a light for the nation. Just in this week's Parsha, we read it. Kihi chochmaschem. This is the wisdom of the Jewish people. Ubinaschem, the extra knowledge that we have. And when we do what we have to do, the others appreciate that and understand that in a good way and give us respect and give us to do what we have to do. Yaakov gave a blessing also to his children, and he says to them, Hamalach hagoy lesim mikol ra, the angel that saved me in my journey, hu yivarech es ha'narim, he will bless the children, b'shem avotai, in the name of my forefathers, v'yidgu la'rov, and they'll be multiplied like fish, b'kerev ha'aretz. So he's giving them a great bracha that they'll multiply like fish in the dry land. The question is obvious. The fish grow, live in the water, in the sea, not in the dry land. So what is this bracha? V'yidgu la'rov b'kerev ha'aretz. Says the Chassam Sofer, that's exactly the point. Yaakov Avinu gave a special blessing for the Jewish people, that even in times of exile, even in times that they're not in the land of Israel, they're not in the place that they're supposed to be, but they'll still have a tremendous success, hatzlacha, they'll succeed, they'll manage, they'll go through knowing that they are Jewish people. And that's exactly the power of the Jewish people. Wherever the Jewish people go, travel through history, there are always Jews keeping Torah and mitzvahs. There are always Jews that were keeping their identity. They didn't get lost. They remained. They went through all the challenges, like the Abarbanel and like his people in Spain, that did a major Kiddush Hashem and went through all what they went through because they are like the fish in a dry land. we have the power from the blessing of Yaakov Avinu. Rabbi Yaakov Emdin says that the survivor of the Jewish people till today is surviving so many pogroms, so many problems, exile, being pursued, being blamed for everything, and we still exist as a nation. That's the language of Rabbi Yaakov Emdin. The survivor till today of the Jewish people is a greater miracle than Yetzias Mitzrayim. That the nation that accepted, that went out from Mitzrayim, accepted the Torah, and is still around, going through so much, hundreds of years, and still surviving, and still keeping Shabbos, and still putting on tefillin, and still keeping out tzitzis, putting on tzitzis all over the world, that is a greater miracle from Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyah that says the following: Rachel is known that she was crying for the Jewish people. She is crying. Kol berama nishma. The crying of Rachel is being heard in the hills of Yerushalayim, not too far, Bethlehem. Kol berama nishma nehi bechi tamurim. We hear the voice, we hear the sound of the crying of Rachel. Hashem says. She's crying on the exile that the children will send out. She's refusing to receive consolation. She's crying and crying and crying. And then the pasuk goes on. Eventually, Bezrat Hashem, Hashem will say to her, Ko amar Hashem, mini kolech mibechi. Stop crying. Ve'einayich midima. And no more tears from your eyes. Stop crying, no more tears from your eyes. Why? Ki yes sachar lepulatech, is reward for all the good actions that you did, Rachel. Veshavu, they will return, me'eretz oyev. Your children will come back from the land of the enemies. Reb Simcha Wasserman was a great Rabbi over here in Ohr Somayach years ago. Simcha Wasserman, he was the son of the great Rabbi Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman that died during the Holocaust on Kiddush Hashem in Europe. And Reb Simcha Wasserman learned this verse, and he says the following: if we look carefully in the verse, it really describes what will be with the Jewish people. The first stage is Hashem is saying, I'm going to pay you back, is reward, yes sachar, I'm going to pay you back for the good actions. Veshavu me'eretz oyev. I'll just collect the Jews from all over the world. But that's not yet completed. The Geulah, the final Geulah, the final redemption is not completed. First stage is that Jews will run away from all places in the world, realizing that they're not safe over there, they're not comfortable over there, or that the creeds that they can't live there anymore. And that's why they'll make it here to the land. It's hard to say, that this is not what's happening. It's hard to be blind and not to see that this is exactly what is happening. This is what the story of the Jewish people. After, there's no other nation in the world that makes it back to his land. So many years of exile, and the Jewish people come here to the land. From Yemen, from Morocco, from Europe, from Russia, from all kind of exiles. Veshavu me'eretz oyev. Reb Simcha Wasserman says this first stage is going to happen. The Jews will realize that they're not wanted over there in the other places, and they'll come to the land of Israel. But it's not the final redemption. What's the second verse? Ve'yesh tikva la'achrisech. But the hope. What's the hope of the Jewish people? What's the hope? What's the future? Veshavu ligvulam. Over here it says that they'll come back to the boundaries. And again, if Simcha Wasserman says, that's right here. First stage is Jewish people are just running away from places that they don't want them anymore, that they're being pursued. Veshavu me'eretz oyev. They're running away from all kind of enemies. just to run away, looking for shelter. The second stage, and that will be the final redemption, that will be the real redemption, is that is hope for the future, and the children will come back to the boundaries, meaning they understand that they belong over here in the Holy Land, in Eretz Yisrael, and no other place in the world. So this pasuk in Yirmiyah is really, this is what's happening. So the good news is that good things are happening. So much to be thankful for. Like I said before, look at the idea, put the state of Israel in aside. We're not dealing with that now, but look at the idea that Jews could live in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land. How many things were built here? How many yeshivot? How many schools? How many communities? So we have this zchut, and we have to appreciate that. We're not allowed to take this for granted. How many people were dreaming to come to Eretz Yisrael and they didn't make it? Moshe Rabbeinu, this week's Parsha, Vet Hanan. Chazal say that Moshe prayed over 1,000 different kinds of prayers to Hashem to allow them to come into Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu is begging to come out to Israel. And stories later, the stories that is told about the Gaon, that is actually the Gaon of Vilna, that was actually on the way with his students, with his devoted students to come into the land of Israel. Secretly, I don't think really we know the real answer, but he turned back and he didn't make it to Eretz Yisrael, the Chafetz Chaim as well. So many righteous, big people were dreaming to come to Eretz Yisrael. Your great-grandfathers were dreaming to come to Eretz Yisrael and they didn't make it. So if we are living here in Eretz Yisrael, we have to appreciate that and say thank you to Hashem and say thank you for what we have. This is the beginning. Be'ezrat Hashem will be more. But we have to be thankful for what we have and to ask for more. There's an interesting Chasam Sofer. Again, it's an interesting, seems to be a difference of opinion between the Talmud Yerushalmi and the Talmud Bavli. The two temples were destroyed on Tisha B'Av, but the question is, when the enemy managed to go in to break through the walls of the city. The second temple for sure happened on the 17th of Tammuz. As we know that we fasted just 3 weeks ago, right? For that reason, that the trouble, the pain started when the non-Jews broke in the wall and they came into Yerushalayim. The question is, what was the date that the non-Jews, the Babylonians, when they broke into the walls of Jerusalem in the first temple? The Talmud Bavli says that actually the first temple they broke through in the 9th of Tammuz, not in the 17th, in the 9th. And the reason that we fast only in the 17th, because it's too close to make two fast days, one next to each other in that gap. So that's why we fast only in the 17th, not in the 9th. That's the approach of the Bavli. Okay? So they broke the first temple in the 9th, the second one on the 17th, and we go with the later one because it's more relevant for us. The second destruction of the temple is more relevant for us, so that's why we fast on the 17th of Tammuz. The Talmud Yerushalmi says, no, the first temple also, the enemies, the Babylonians, went in on the 17th of Tammuz as well. It happened in the same day, also in the first temple and also in the second temple. But it was a confusion. Yirmiyah, when he wrote it, was a confusion, and by mistake, that's what the Yerushalmi, these are the words of the Yerushalmi, by mistake he wrote the 9th of Tammuz, but actually they broke through in the 17th of Tammuz. The language of the Yerushalmi, the words of the Yerushalmi is Bilbul Cheshbonos Hayukan. They miscalculated the dates when the enemies came in to the city of Jerusalem in the first temple. So that's the Yerushalmi. Very interesting idea. Meaning that actually what's said in Yirmiyah, in the Pasuk of Yirmiyah, it's not the right date. Actually, the enemies broke through, like we said, in the 17th of Tammuz, also in the first temple. There was a miscalculation, a confusion that took place at that time. The Chasam Sofer asks, so we see that Yirmiyah, according to the Yerushalmi, was confused and had a miscalculation because of the pain and the suffering that he saw of the Jewish people. How come Moshe Rabbeinu did not have this confusion? In this week's parsha, we're going to see Hashem says to Moshe, go up to the mountain and I'll show you Ad Hayam Ha'acharon. Hayam means sea, so the far away that you could most see. So I'll show you the land of Israel from far away. You're not coming into the land, but I'll show you Ad Hayam Ha'acharon, to the sea. But Chazal teach us Hayam, you could read it also Yom. Hashem is showing Moshe, you're going up. Moshe is about to leave the Jewish people. He's not going to come into Israel. And Hashem shows him all what's going to happen to the Jewish people. All the exiles, all the suffering, everything, till the last day. So how come Moshe was not confused? And we know that he wasn't. It says very clear in the Torah that Moshe was in full power and strength when he passed away. So how is it? Says the Chasam Sofer, an unbelievable idea. He says the following. You know what's the difference? The difference is that Moshe saw also the redemption. Ad Hayom Ha'acharon, Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu all the problems that the Jewish people will go through, all the suffering, all the exiles that they'll go through. But he showed him also the last destination, the final redemption. That's why Moshe didn't have the confusion. Yirmiyah, unfortunately, didn't see the very end, and that's why it's the confusion. And that message of the Chasam Sofer is for us. There are problems. The Jewish people went through all this. You know, it's brought down, a man is walking on his way. He's supposed to get to a certain place. And he doesn't know, this is before the days of the ways or GPS or smartphones or cell phones, nothing. He's going on the way, he comes to the intersection, and the sign that shows the direction fell. He doesn't know what to do. He has to take a right or left. He must do one of those, right or left. The sign fell, he doesn't know what to do, where he should go. The answer is, he knows from where he came. He knows from where he came. That's the story of the Jewish people. We went through all this. We went through all this. And if we're talking about Tisha, about suffering and pain, obviously, this year is a very tough year for the Jewish people. Destruction, you might say, we're here in Israel, but people in the south were evacuated, they had to run away from the house. People up north evacuated, they cannot go back home. So many people were killed, so many people were injured, so many people are still fighting, giving their life for this place. But the answer is, we have to be and look for the future. We know from where we came. We know that we are the chosen people. We know that Hashem took us out from Mitzrayim. We know that we have a destination to go to. We know that Hashem gave us the Torah mitzvahs and we have to go through a lot. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like we said, Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, the survivor that we survived till today, that's the greatest miracle more than the exodus of Egypt. So even in the toughest time, very, very tough for people. People are in miserable pain. But we have to know that, like we said, Hashem is never going to abandon the Jewish people completely. It's like a surgeon that is doing a surgery, and some surgeries are very hard, very tough. Some surgeries take hours and hours. and you're sitting out there and you don't know what's going on. But you know that it's under control, it's measured, and Hashem knows exactly when to end this and when to stop. And we're not allowed to give up hope. The power of Am Yisrael is that in all these miserable, tough situations, challenges, is that we never give up. We always have to look for the future. We always have to be connected to the land of Israel. There's a very interesting medrash. The medrash says that there are two great tzaddikim, Yosef and Moshe Rabbeinu. They both died outside of Eretz Yisrael, and one makes it to Eretz Yisrael and one does not make it to Eretz Yisrael. Yosef HaTzadik dies in Egypt, and he commanded the Jewish people, when you make it out of Israel, make sure to take out my bones. I don't want to stay here. Make sure to carry me and bring me to the land of Israel. He commanded the Jewish people. And they did, and he makes it. He's buried over there in the end of the day here in Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the Jewish people, dies outside of Eretz Yisrael, and he doesn't make it even to be buried over here. So we spoke before that he wanted to come in alive. So, we know that he prayed, it didn't work out. That's a separate discussion. But why he wasn't buried over here in Eretz Yisrael? And the Medrash says the difference is a very powerful Medrash. When Yosef was in Egypt, he called himself Na'ar Ivri. He called himself the Hebrew boy. I'm not one of you. I'm not Egyptian. I'm the Hebrew boy that was exiled from the land of my father. He always remained and connected to the land from where he came from Eretz Yisrael. But when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Midian, the girls of Midian called him Ish Mitzri, Egyptian man, and he didn't correct them. He was okay with that they called him Egyptian man. So it says, this is a medrash. And the medrash says, that's why Yosef had the merit to be buried over here in the land of Israel, and Moshe Rabbeinu, no. So that's the idea. The only way that we could bring the final redemption is this, to give more merit for the Jewish people. More Torah, more mitzvahs, and one condition that we cannot compromise. Achdus, unity. The power of the Jewish people is when they're united. It's not just something nice to say, it's actually reality. We know that there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. There's not one Jew that could do all the 613 mitzvahs himself. He could be a great tzaddik, but if he's not a Kohen, he can't do the mitzvahs that are dependent on a Kohen. If he doesn't have a farm or other things, so it's not one Jew that could do all the mitzvahs. The Torah is given to the Jewish people as a nation. As a nation means that we're all together, we're united. That's the power of the Jewish people, and that's something that we cannot compromise. And that's the big challenge also nowadays, is the unity, the achdus of Am Yisrael. That's the whole idea of davening in a minyan. A minyan means that you're davening with other 10 people. It's not just 10 individuals that are davening, it's making it to a different level. The unity makes it, instead of 10 individuals, it makes it as a group. The Jewish people is a group of people that are over here, and they are meant to be here, and the power of the Jewish people is the unity, the davening to Hashem, always asking for Hashem to bring back the final redemption. I'll just end up with this. The Rabbeinu Bechai mentions, we learn that Rivka did not have children. She was barren, she didn't have children. But if you look at the verse, look how it's written. It says, the verse says like this. Vaye'etar Yitzchak. Yitzchak, Ye'etar is one of the languages of tefillah, of prayer. Vaye'etar Yitzchak lenochach Rivka. across of Rivka, hi akarahi. The verse says, the pasuk says, Yitzchak stood across of Rivka because she was barren, and he prayed for her. The Rabbeinu Bechai says it should be the other way around. Told me first there was a problem. Told me first that Rivka didn't have children, and that's why Yitzchak stood and prayed for her. Why it says the other way around? That first it says that Yitzchak davened, and then told me, Rivka was barren, she didn't have children. Says the Rabbeinu Bechai, the famous thing that we know. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a great desire for the prayer of the tzaddikim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitaveh, has a great desire for the tefillah of tzaddikim. And the right way to see it is like this. It's not that it's a problem, and that's why you have to daven. It's not that it's a problem, so Yitzchak is standing to daven. It's the other way around. Hashem brings the problem in order that the tzaddik should daven. And that's why it's written in this order. The first thing is, Vayetar Yitzchak. Yitzchak is standing to pray. Lenochach ishto, okay, of course his wife, because she didn't have children. But that's the main thing. Hashem has a great desire for the prayer of the tzaddikim. And that's the power of Am Yisrael for praying and asking. Also the final geula will come only when we beg and we ask from Hashem. Today in the morning we read, Uvikashten, you'll ask, the people will be in exile. They'll suffer, they'll be in pain. They'll search, they'll ask. Uvikashten, es Hashem Elokecha, you'll ask for Hashem. Umatzasu, you'll find Him. Why you'll find Him? Ki tidrashena, you actually ask Him, you search for Him, bechol avavcha, with all your heart, bechol nafshecha. You search for Hashem with all your heart, really, really completely with all your heart, you'll find Hashem. Says the Rabbeinu Bechai, not the Rabbeinu Bechai, I saw other commentaries say, the verse, look at the verse, it says, uvikashten, plural, uvikashten, and then it ends single, umatzasa, you'll find Him, ki tidrashena, you are searching for Him. What happened? It starts plural and it ends single. That's the idea of the Jewish people. When we are separated, we have problems. We suffer, we're in exile. But when Am Yisrael is doing tshuva, one of the great conditions for doing tshuva is to get together. The achdus of Am Yisrael, the unity of Am Yisrael is crucial. It's not just a bonus. Am Yisrael could function when it's together, when it's the Ahavas Yisrael is spread out, when more Jews are doing Torah mitzvahs, caring for each other, working as a group. May Hashem see the prayers of all those years that Am Yisrael is praying, for 1,956 years that Am Yisrael is praying and begging. And may all the tefillos that we daven and we pray to Hashem will be answered, Bilhei Rabbi Yameinu, with Ahavas Yisrael.